Hmm. Now I'm going to get the Ukrainian topic a little bit more in my wheelhouse. So a little bit about the composition, disposition capabilities of Ukrainian ground forces, um, what we refer to as an army capabilities. Let's talk overall Ukraine. Total active military is around 250,000. Um, at about 700,000 reservists. So you get a total force of about 1 million. If you look at the United States, just our United States Army, total Army active guard reserve is about 1.1 million people. So just the United States Army, all three components is larger than the entire armed forces of Ukraine. So Ukraine's active forces is broken up into the ground forces, roughly 169,000 personnel. Their Navy 6,500, right? It's on the Black Sea, um, and, and that's not going to go well for them. The Air Force about 36,000. Roughly 4,000 in their special operations forces, which includes psychological operations and civil affairs capabilities. So they have picked up on that as elements of special operations. And then they have a National Guard of about 60,000. Now, don't think of their National Guard like the American National Guard, right? In the United States Army, the National Guard or the Air National Guard supplements is a part-time force that supplements the active component. Um, this is more of a domestic kind of police force, border patrol, that and those kind of elements. So it's not. It doesn't mirror the capability, or I should say, have the exact same capabilities of the ground forces of their army. It does not. Um, a lot of small arms, some crew serve weapons, and light vehicle capability. Right? It's not part of the army. It's a separate entity. Um, so a little bit different than what we have in the United States, right? And when other countries talk about having a national guard, they really mean a this is what is responsible last line of defense to guard the nation, right? They don't talk about it as part of their general purpose force. So talk some equipment, then we'll go into organization. So there's four variants of main battle tanks in Ukrainian ground forces: T-84, T-80, T-72, and T-64. Um, what Ukraine really had going for them is most of the Soviet tank production capability was in Ukraine, right? So when the Warsaw Pact ended, when the Soviet Union collapsed, a lot of that military industrial base was in Ukraine, and they retained that. They also retained the third largest um, stockpile of nuclear weapons at the end of the Cold War as well. Unfortunately, Ukraine gave those to Russia, and they were supposedly disassembled, right? But Ukraine lost their nuclear balance when they did that and decided to become a non-nuclear nation. But back to the tanks, and I'll start from the bottom up on these. T-64 is the most numerous main battle tank in Ukraine. Uh, Estimates are right around 2,000, maybe a little bit more T-64s. T-64 was designed for Soviet use only. It was not designed to be exported. So it's at its time, right, 1960s. This was one of the best tanks in the world. If not the best tank in the world, was the T-64. 125 millimeter main gun. It has day night capability. Um, it is contrary to popular belief, T-64 and above is a stabilized turret. It's not Abrams, Leo Challenger stabilized. Pretty elementary system, but it can shoot. With a 125 millimeter cannon, this thing can reach out and hit targets up to 3,000 meters. Now in Ukraine, are there 3,000-meter shots? No. Um, the engagements will be much shorter, within 1,000 meters. But the T-64 good tank, especially at its time. Is as it's been passed up big time, and we'll see that successors that Ukraine has as well as what Russia has, and then some of our capability and our NATO allies' capability is much better than the T-64. All right, next up T-72. Estimate Ukraine has around 300 T-72s. Some minor upgrades on the T-64. Of course, Ukraine will have the Soviet version, not the export version. Um, so better fire control system, a little bit better armor protection. Um, good tank, still a good tank by today's standards. Doesn't hold up against Bradley and Abrams. It doesn't. Gets chewed up by them pretty fast. Next up, T-80. Right, this is really the last of the Soviet tanks. Came into production, development in 1975, 76. Ukraine has around 340, maybe more, the T-80s. And then the last one they have is T-84. This is Ukrainian produced. And we're looking at about 150 plus or minus T-84s. So all their tanks are 125 millimeter cannon. So you're really looking at a max effective range, probably around 3,200 meters. They have 12.7 millimeter machine gun on top, 7.62 coaxially mounted machine gun in the turret. So a decent number of tanks, but their most modern tanks, the T-80, T-84 numbers are not what they would really like them to be, especially if they have to face an armored threat from Russia, which is going to be T-80, T-90, T-14 Armada, right? They're gonna be much more modern, better tanks with better fire control system, more armor protection, and frankly better ammunition. Um, so there's the tanks. Infantry fighting vehicles. They do have BMP. They have 4 BMP-3s, is what I'm finding. In reality, with such a small fleet, are they maintaining those? Are all 4 operational? Hell no. So predominantly BMP-1 and 2, right? So BMP-2 is 30 millimeter cannon. BMP-1 is a 73 millimeter cannon. So roughly 2,500, give or take, BMPs. Um, BMP's a piece of crap. It's an awful infantry fighting vehicle. Fits a squad in the back. They have a bunch of them. The armament's not great. 30 millimeter, you can reach out effectively 2,500, maybe 3,000 meters on an area target. 73 millimeter cannon on the BMP-1. Um, these are pretty ineffective as fighting vehicles. They're more effective, with the infantrymen in the back. They have a lot of them, and they fill up their mechanized brigades, which we'll talk about later. They have BMD-1 and BMD-2s, looking at about 50 of each, quite irrelevant. So about 100 BMD family in total. You'll find these in their airborne units, just like with the Russians. Crazy thing Russians, Ukrainians do is they will drop a BMD with the crew and the infantry in it. Good on you. I'm not doing that. Next up, you'll see in their motorized infantry units are BTRs. They have a mix of BTR 60, 70, 80. We're looking around 800 BTRs in the inventory. Again, that's comparable to the Striker or the Lav. 8-wheel, fits a squad in the back, small turret. So it's a mobile crew serve weapons platform that supports the infantry squad. So you'll find these in all of their fighting brigade formations. Here's where they get similar to their Russian counterparts, is their artillery. They don't have the numbers that the Russians have, but they have some decent artillery. We'll start down there at the 2S3. It's a 152 millimeter cannon, around 230 of those bad boys. The 2S1, there next to it, that's a 122 millimeter cannon. All right, so you're looking at the 122 is going to reach out about 17 kilometers. The 152 is going to reach out 23 kilometers. Maybe hit up to 26 with RAP. 2S19, significant upgrade. All right, if you look at 2S1, you can see that's like a BMP chassis. 2S1, 2S3. 2S19 is a T80 chassis. All right, and that's significant on the 2S19. Plus, it's got a giant ass turret. 2S19 is more comparable to the 109A6. Putting on a T80 chassis, it can keep up inside the armored formations. It can keep up with the tanks. Give them. The Russians have always done a really good job with having common hull platforms, which does help with maintenance. But looking around 63 2S19s in the Ukrainian ground forces. BM-21, about 350 of these. It's a truck bed mounted rocket artillery system. So they can lay a bunch of rockets really fast, and it's pretty mobile. The last major piece of equipment I'll hit on is the Mi-24, the Hind D. Ukraine might have 30 of these operational, might have 15 of them operational. Helicopters are a pain in the butt. If you've ever dealt with helicopter maintenance, and I'm not intimate with it. I wasn't intimate with it in my career. I was just exposed to it, and dealt with a piece of it. Having an aviation task force attached to my brigade when I was Brigade XO. And man, aviation maintenance sucks. It's hard. It's even harder when it's Russian equipment. So parts, lead, troubleshooting. So you'll see the reports of Ukraine has 15 operational Hinds to upwards of 30. And they probably have about 50 of them total in their inventory. So their operational readiness rate is not good on Hinds. So that's pretty rough. And in here, I'm not going to get into their Navy, the Air Force, Capes, but they don't have much in the air. Those Hinds is that's a large portion of their close air support, close combat attack capability is in those, and it's not good. So the preponderance of their capability is in their ground forces, and really, you look at their artillery numbers. That's nothing compared to what Russia's going to bring to bear. So quickly, I'll talk the organization of the mechanized brigade. So the armor brigade will be similar, except it'll have more tanks, right? You'll be looking at like 3 tank battalions in the armor brigade instead of 2, right? So the mechanized brigade, you're looking at 2 mechanized infantry battalions. And Ukrainian ground forces are going to use the Russian system, right? So it's a 1 to 3, right? So it's a pyramid structure, right? So a brigade or a battalion will have 3 companies. Company will have 3 platoons. Platoon will have 3 vehicles, right? So a mechanized company, right, of which there are 3 in each of these battalions, right, is going to have 10 BMPs, right? BMP 1, BMP 2. Figure that BMP 1s will go in the units with the C-64s, T-72s, right? I figured the 80s and the 84s, those are going to be in the armor brigades. But 10 BMPs in a company, 31 BMPs in a battalion. So you're looking in a mech brigade, 60 BMPs. So 60 times 13, 780, right? All right, so about 780 of our BMPs are sucked up in those 13 mech brigades. 2 tank battalions, same. It's a 1 to 3, 1 to 3, 1 to 3. So 10 tanks in a company, 31 tanks in a battalion. All right, so 62 tanks in a mech brigade. Right, so kind of same math. The mech brigades have this motorized infantry battalion. Right, motorized infantry battalion. That's going to be your BTRs. I'm going to fill that up. So really like 31 BTRs. There's an air defense battalion. And here, an engineer battalion, right? And the air defense and the engineers and the anti-tank battalion. These three would generally be some variant of the BMP. Because there's several variants of the BMP. They will also have dismounted systems. The air defense will have dismounted manned portable air defense systems. The engineers will be a mix of mechanized engineers and dismounted engineer capabilities. And their engineers will have the full complement of mobility, counter-mobility, and survivability equipment, just like we would have in the United States. Anti-tank battalion is going to be guided missile heavy. So they have a large anti-tank capability inside each brigade, an entire battalion. And then what they have that's kind of unique is a brigade artillery group. So that's why I put these 3 artillery battalions off to the side. So they'll have a light artillery battalion, they call it light, but it's a 2S1 battalion. They'll have like a 2S3/2S19 battalion, and then they'll have a rocket battalion in each brigade. All right, so each brigade has 3 battalions of artillery. So that's a huge volume of artillery that brigade Ukrainian ground forces brigade can bring to bear into fight. So that's wonderful for them. So you're looking at like 90 artillery pieces, right? It's like 60 cannon, 30 rocket pieces per brigade. So that's really augmenting their ground maneuver capability. So that's my quick look at Ukraine's active forces, what they have predominantly in the ground forces. I don't get in the Navy and the Air Force. And like I said at the beginning, their Navy's going to get annihilated within hours. Because Russia owns the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov. So just again, quick look, and I use the Mech Brigade organization as kind of a template here to give you an idea of what their fighting force looks like, right? Similar to the United States, they're a brigade-centric army in Ukraine, right? So 13 brigades that look like that. 2 armor brigades look very similar to that. More tanks, less mechanized infantry. And then they do have some separate rocket and artillery brigades. And even besides the mech brigade, there's some separate companies. There's an intel company, a signal company, same kind of things we have. A chemical company, a reconnaissance company inside there, right? So they have some additional capability inside a brigade. But that I just wanted to hit on the large fighting pieces of it. And just to give you an idea, right? I haven't gone to the Russian side, but current estimates there's upwards of 90 Russian battalion tactical groups on the borders of Ukraine at this time. So quick drunk math. There's 20 Russian brigades, 20 Russian brigades in around Ukraine. Right, so they already have Ukraine outnumbered, in my estimate, with what they have there. But Russia's not fighting with that home field advantage. Over, I'd say 60% Ukraine. Ukraine has the home field advantage. There is that southern and eastern part that I've mentioned in previous videos. That is predominantly ethnic, it's ethnic Russian, and that's going to get Russia an advantage there. It will feel like a home game um, in those parts of Ukraine. So just my quick update: Ukrainian ground forces. Just brief overview of capabilities, but you can go in on this. You can look up each individual piece of equipment, um, see specific capabilities of it, see if there's anything that trips your wig on them. Ukraine ground forces, they're not bad. They're not really great either. They're pretty average military, um, and and vastly outnumbered by Russia. Just with even just the little bit that Russia has actually committed um, towards this potential fight. And we haven't even gotten into, what if Belarus follows and supports Russia? Well, Belarus has their capabilities. Um, there are Russian capabilities sitting in Moldova, probably around a battalion tactical group sitting in Moldova. Predominantly, that's I think that's Russian Spetsnaz over there, and they're doing kind of train, advise, assist mission in Moldova, right? Because they're working in insurgency in Moldova to maintain Russian influence in Moldova. So there's all kinds of shenanigans going on over there right now. Um, but Ukraine, a lot of their equipment is starting to get dated. Maintenance become older equipment. Maintenance becomes an issue on it, right? If anybody out there has like an older car, truck, van, or SUV, right? If it's from the '90s, it's harder to maintain. You know, if it's from the '60s, like the BMP-1, the T-64, the 2S1, the 2S3, like the BTR-60, the BTR-70. Those are hard to maintain, and they're not cheap to maintain, especially when the main supplier of repair parts is Russia, right? It's currently who you're faced with, right? The BM-21, that's ancient piece of equipment as well. Um, so Ukraine has some material challenges um, with their combat equipment. Um, their repair parts, their ammunition comes from Russia. They do have like I said though, they did inherit at the end of the Cold War a large portion of the Soviet military manufacturing base. Um, but still, Russia spends economy on military and have done a really decent job of it. So that's kind of where Ukraine sits ground forces wise. Um, they're outgunned and outnumbered by Russia. Russia has kind of a neutral to a slight home field advantage in eastern and southern Ukraine. Central and western Ukraine, Ukraine has an overwhelming home field advantage there. So what I think of is like how does Russia try to shape the environment if they choose to go at Kiev? How do they shape to turn that to their advantage? Because that's not to their advantage right now. Eastern, southern, completely to Russia's advantage. Um, you know, best case scenario for Ukraine is Russia takes eastern and southern Ukraine, annexes that, buffers Crimea, takes Odessa, has that deep water port onto the Black Sea, um, and then they start building their natural gas and petroleum pipelines through that newly acquired territory. Um, worst case scenario for Ukraine is Russia attacks southwest out of Belarus, envelops, kind of does a double envelopment on Kiev, and takes the entire country. Um, Based on what Russia has done in the past, I would really assess Russia going and taking at least two, maybe three of those eastern Ukrainian administrative districts that are predominantly Russian, ethnic Russian, um, and taking Odessa. As I mentioned before, they don't have a problem with the geographic split between Russian territories. Um, Russia's comfortable with that, especially when it gives them the access and placement that they want. So, and then over time, they'll give them another 7 or 8 years, and they'll close that geographic gap. I don't think that's a problem for Russia. Um, so, hey, 2 videos today, pretty pumped. I do need to get back to working on my dissertation, and I got a hockey game to coach here in a couple hours. So there you go. Tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, infantry personnel carriers, self-propelled artillery. Gotta love it.